Welcome! Today we are diving deep into that winding, confusing, and kind of amazing road from our late teens all the way through our 20s. It's a time of huge change and possibility, so let's get into it.
You know that feeling? Like you're stuck in the middle. You're not a kid anymore, but you definitely don't feel like a full-blown adult yet. If you've ever felt that way, you are so not alone. It's basically the defining feeling for a whole generation trying to figure things out when the old rulebook for adulthood just doesn't seem to fit anymore.
So what do you even call this phase? It's more than just your 20s. It turns out this is a real, distinct experience, and developmental psychologists are now recognizing it as its own unique stage of life. And it has a name: emerging adulthood. This term was coined by a psychologist named Jeffrey Jensen Arnett. Now, what's so interesting here is that he argues it's not just a longer adolescence because you have so much more freedom from your parents. And it's not really young adulthood either, because let's be honest, most people in this stage don't feel like they've actually arrived at adulthood. It's something totally new. Okay, so why is this happening now? Why does the road to adulthood suddenly seem so much longer and more winding than it was for our parents or grandparents? Let's dig into the reasons.
Well, for starters, look at marriage. This is a huge one. Between 1960 and 2010, just 50 years, the average age people got married jumped by about 6 years. 6 years! That delay alone carves out this massive new chunk of time in a person's life that just didn't exist before.
But of course, it's not just about getting married later. You've got to factor in the need for way more education to get a good job, the fact that jobs themselves are less stable in your 20s, and just a general cultural shift that says, hey, it's okay to take some time to explore and figure yourself out. It's a perfect storm, really. And Arnett actually broke this experience down into 5 core features. First, there's a ton of identity exploration, trying to figure out who you are, what you want in love, and what you believe. That leads to instability, moving a lot, changing jobs, shifting relationships. It's also a really self-focused time, and that's not selfish. It's about building a solid foundation for your life. And of course, there's that signature feeling of being in between, all while being fueled by this incredible sense of optimism and possibility for the future. Now, all this freedom and possibility creates a really fascinating emotional cocktail. On the one hand, it can feel absolutely exhilarating, but on the other, it can be incredibly stressful. I mean, just look at this number. A huge majority, 83% of 18 to 29-year-olds, say that this time of their life is fun and exciting. You see that open road ahead of you and you feel the thrill of it all. But here's the flip side. In that exact same group, more than half also say they feel anxious, often. It makes sense, right? The lack of a clear map, having a million choices, and the pressure to get it right, it's a recipe for a wild mix of good and bad feelings, sometimes all at once. And we need to talk about this, because for some people, when that anxiety and pressure become just too much to handle, that weight can feel completely crushing. And in those moments of really deep emotional pain, people can turn to harmful ways of coping, just to deal with feelings that seem unbearable. One of these is self-injury. It is so important that we understand what this is and what it is not. It's not a cry for attention. It's an expression of deep, deep psychological distress. It's a coping mechanism that takes an invisible, unbearable emotional pain and turns it into a physical pain that can feel, in the moment, more controllable. It's a strategy to survive, not an attempt to die. So let's get really clear and bust some common and harmful myths. The idea that it's for attention, the reality is it's almost always hidden because of shame. The myth that it's a failed suicide attempt, the reality is it's a powerful, if desperate, way to cope and stay alive. And the idea that it's a sign of being crazy. No, it's a human response to overwhelming stress or trauma.
This quote from someone who's been through it, it gives us a really powerful glimpse into what's going on inside. For some, the physical act can feel like a release, like you're literally washing away feelings of guilt or shame, or making an invisible hurt visible. It's a profound expression of pain that really deserves our compassion and our understanding.
Now, while those emotional struggles are a very real part of this journey, they're happening at the same time as the main task of this life stage, which is, well, finding your footing. So let's zoom back out and look at how emerging adults are navigating love, work, and the whole idea of independence. When it comes to love, the old script has been totally thrown out. People are spending more years single, and the goal is often finding a soulmate, not just someone who checks the right boxes. Things like casual relationships and living together before marriage are just normal now.
But what's really fascinating is that even with all these changes, the vast majority, over 80%, do eventually get married.
And the search for work looks pretty similar. It's less about just landing any job and more about finding an identity fit, work that feels like it's truly a part of who you are. This means a lot of people take a much longer, more winding path to a stable career, and so many dream of being their own boss, of having that independence.
So, if getting married and landing a stable career aren't the big markers of adulthood anymore, then what is? Well, when you ask people in this age group what makes someone an adult, they don't point to those external things. They point to these 3 internal achievements: accepting responsibility for yourself, making your own decisions, and becoming financially independent. It's all about autonomy.
When you put it all together, the instability, the exploration, the challenges, the self-focus, you realize this period is incredibly powerful. It's a time of profound transformation, maybe with more potential for real, lasting change than any other time in our lives.
This quote from Arnett just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. As kids, we're pretty limited by our circumstances. And later in adulthood, our lives are filled with commitments that can make big changes really hard. But emerging adulthood, it's this unique, wide-open window of opportunity. And that freedom, it is especially powerful for anyone who grew up in a difficult or unhappy home. This is often the first real chance to leave that environment, to set your own course, and to consciously build a different, healthier life for yourself. It's like a second chance at a starting line.
So the main thing to take away here is that this winding road isn't some strange detour anymore. It's the new normal path to adulthood. And that leaves us with a really important question for society, for our families, and for ourselves. Knowing that this is the new reality, how do we build better guardrails to help support people on this exciting but often pretty treacherous journey?